Welcome back, guys. We reached to the recalculate centroid function where we are passing the dictionary, and this dictionary has each point with its corresponding label that we have assigned in our first iteration or in our each iteration, because we're gonna run till we reach to the convergence point where the clusters are not changing anymore. All right. So again, we are doing the same thing. We have two lists. One we have defined for k centroid, and the second one we have defined for k number of clusters. Now, what we're gonna do in here? So we are going to pop each value, and you can see in the dictionary we we call the items function. It's going to return us all the key value pair, which I'm storing into two variable, I key and I value. And then my first thing I'm going to see if the length of the k cluster is equal to 0, then what does it mean? And because the at the moment the k cluster is empty, right? So what I'm going to do, there is no value existing value in my k cluster. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to insert whatever the value I'm getting from my dictionary. I'm going to store it as it is, because I cannot compare with any existing value. Now, my next thing, that if I already have the value, and remember, I'm actually storing tags into k cluster. Right. So for example, the first key value pair, I'm getting against my point, I'm getting a tag of cluster 1. Right. So that cluster 1 without any condition is going to go and store into k cluster. Right. And then there is another thing. I'm going to actually get the index value of it, because obviously I need to prepare another one which is against this cluster. I'm going to actually calculate the center of that cluster, right? So if I'm getting the first cluster 1, so I need to see what's going to be a new center point of that cluster. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually, because right now I only have one value, so I cannot compute the mean of that value. Its mean is going to be equal to the value. So I'm just inserting into my centroid the actual value itself, right? So that's for the first value. I'm going to come once we have the next value. So in the next iteration, once we have a new point, now we already have one cluster. Now I'm going to see, so this condition is not going to be true, because the cluster is not going to be empty. Now we come into the else. So in the else, we're going to see whether our cluster ID. So for example, if we have cluster 1 coming again, so that condition is going to be true, because it is that cluster 1 is already sitting within my k cluster, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually get the index of that cluster, and using that cluster, I'm calculating the centroid in another array. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually get the value based on that index from my centroid, and I'm going to add the new point, whatever it is coming from the array, and I'm dividing it by 2, because we have two values, and if we want to calculate the mean, we're going to divide it by 2. So imagine if we have 10 values and we keep doing the mean of 2 values, and then add another value, and then mean divided by 2 at the end, we're going to get the similar mean as we normally do by adding all 10 values and divided by 10. So based on that technique, we are calculating the mean at each index into my centroid array. Now, the last condition, if the cluster array is not empty and even the value is not. So for example, now we are getting cluster 3, right? We only have cluster 1 into our array. We have already start calculating the new mean based on the points which are coming with tag as of cluster 1. But what about if we are getting a new cluster which is cluster 3, right? So these two conditions are going to be false, and our else case is going to be executed, and it does exactly the same thing. It's going to add the new cluster tag, which is obviously cluster 3 without any condition, into my k cluster array. and it's going to get the index. So obviously the second value, so the cluster index is going to sorry, the index value is going to be 1, and that value we are storing into the index variable, and based on that index variable we are inserting the actual value, which is actually the point, into my centroid. And then obviously the next time once we run and cluster 3 comes again as a fourth entry out of my dictionary, then this condition will execute, and you can see what we are doing. We are getting the index from my cluster based on obviously the value, which is cluster 3, and based on that index I'm getting the existing value, which is obviously the mean of one value from my centroid. I'm going to add the new value and divide it by 2. So at the end of this function, we're going to have 3 new cluster with 3 new centroid, which is going to use to define a new the new cluster scheme, or the new boundaries of these 3 cluster, right? So that's why you can see I'm just returning the k centroid, because k centroid is keeping the mean of the 3 new means based on the values that I have passed into my function, right? Now that is the last statement of my main function. We come on the top, and then it will start again the whole process. It will increment the counter, and then the whole process will rerun. And if you don't understand, please watch the previous video. I'm going to put the link in there, and then our clusters are going to be more refined, because now we have the new means. Based on those new means, it's going to actually refine the classification of points within the cluster, right? This will keep going until unless we reach to the max iteration, which is 5 in this case, and then we will see after we reach whether are we reaching to the local minima where the centroids are fixed and they are not changing, or we still need to increase the iteration. So that's the whole internal mechanics in a very simple way with one dimensional array we have executed. And in the next video I'm going to run the whole algorithm from end to end to show you how it works. If you have any question regarding recalculation the centroid, please feel free to post the comment. More than happy to answer. Otherwise, I'm going to see you in the next video with the full end-to-end demo and some graphical explanation of the algorithm. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.